One disciple asks, "Venerable Buddha, I do not ask this for myself. I ask for the suffering of this whole world. For those born without completeness, I have seen lives that began with absence. Some children never had a chance to smile. They must lie motionless. Their eyes have never seen the sun's light. Their ears have never heard a bird's song, and their mouths have never spoken a single greeting. Their life is a narrow prison cell. It is right inside their own body. All their senses are chained. All their flying dreams are just hopeless tremors in their mind. The pain does not stop at the body, my lord. I have also seen souls forever stuck in the foggy veil of intellect. They are like candles hidden from the wind. They cannot grasp the teachings. They cannot understand this complex world of logic. They cannot step out of the shadow of immaturity by themselves. For them, intellect is a locked door, and communication is just a silent wall. It separates them from everyone else. This lack of clarity makes them vulnerable. It makes them easily forgotten and easily judged as worthless. The suffering piles up when it is not just one person's karma. It is a painful mark on all humanity. I see generations born in lands that suffered from the Agent Orange effects, or from brutal war. Their bodies are distorted. Their minds endure pain not caused by their own fault. It is a legacy of greed and destruction. It is what mankind sowed onto the earth. This imperfection is an indictment of our collective ignorance. It is about the devastation we have caused to this planet and to each other. We are all human. We share the same blood. We breathe the same air. Yet, why are some born with the wings of freedom, with healthy bodies and sharp minds, as if blessed beforehand, and others only have an enduring form and a cramped mind? They must fight with every breath, every step, every thought. If life truly is a priceless gift from the Creator, then why is that gift not given completely to everyone? Why do some receive the light, while others must receive such a heavy burden? A destiny that seems to have been drained of hope right from the start. Buddha, no one is complete, my child. It's just that some carry their wounds visible on the outside, and some hide them inside. I have stood there. I have witnessed the moment of birth in thousands of places across the world. The cry of welcome is not always followed by complete joy. There are moments when the joy is stopped by a sudden silence from the midwife, a fleeting look of loss from the father, then a quiet gaze downwards, avoiding the mother's eyes. In the mother's arms the child lies, the tiny form, but it immediately carries a clear lack. It could be the eyes that will never open to the light. It could be the weak body. It cannot take its own steps. I also see other children. Their bodies seem flawless, but their minds are forever immature. A door to understanding seems to have closed from the start. They cannot absorb the world with logic. They cannot grasp the complexity of language. They are trapped in limitless innocence. And the pain spreads wider. It spreads from the earth. I see children in lands that suffered from Agent Orange or brutal bombs. The lack in their form is not just an individual story. It is a scar etched by the destruction that humanity caused to each other. These wounds are a reminder that none of us are innocent when life is destroyed. The parents' confusion at that moment is the greatest sorrow I have ever seen. It is not physical pain. It is the shattering of a dream for completeness that they longed for. People ask themselves, what did I do wrong? Why must my child receive this? I look at that lack, and I see a simple truth. Humans focus too much on the function of the body. Legs for running, eyes for seeing, mind for calculating. They forget that a person's value lies in being born, in breathing, in feeling, not in what they can do. These incomplete forms, whether congenital or a legacy of others, are great teachers sent to us. They force the complete to look at life differently. They teach patience, which people never learn when everything is easy. They teach gratitude for the senses, which people often take for granted. The child who cannot see the light with their eyes, they will force their parents to seek light from care, from nurturing. The child who cannot understand the world's complexity, they will live with the pristine truthfulness that adults have lost. I see the mother. After the first tears, she begins to touch her child gently. Acceptance is not resignation. It is the birth of a new love. This love is not pity, but an absolute reverence for the soul residing in that enduring form. That is a sacred moment. The moment the mother lets go of the self that desires perfection and accepts her child in its lack. The body's imperfection does not reduce the soul's completeness. On the contrary, it makes love purer, not burdened by expectation or comparison. That incomplete child, by their presence, saves their parents' souls from attachment to the material world. That is the first and simplest truth you must see. Where there is unconditional acceptance, complete love is born. My child, after witnessing sorrow, Where do people usually go for an explanation? They seek an answer. The wise people in the world, those who spend their lives researching the body's structure, they will give it a name. They will use intellect to dissect life. They call the incomplete forms the result of anomalies in the gene structure, the material remnants left by the environment. They call it genetic error, congenital disease, or chemical impact. This explanation brings temporary comfort to the mind. It helps people identify the cause, the how of the situation, and avoid blaming a higher power. It is the light of biological understanding, and I do not deny that light, but listen to the deepest voice. The heart of the father and mother cannot live by a diagnosis paper, cannot grow by a complex chemical formula. That heart only feels an inexplicable burden pressing on their shoulders and on their child's destiny. Science calls it an error, but to the heart, it is a mysterious arrangement, a question 1,000 times bigger than the name genetic error. This is where human understanding splits. The mind is satisfied with finding the cause, but the soul longs for meaning. The soul asks, why did this child, this soul, choose to bear this incomplete burden to come to me? They must seek an answer that can soothe the pain, a spiritual answer. I see the father, the mother. After the initial shock, they begin to contemplate. They look at their child's lack, and they realize this is not an error, but a courageous choice by a soul. They believe that this child came not to live an easy life, but to complete a profound lesson, a lesson that those with complete bodies will never have the chance to learn. Look, those with healthy bodies and sharp minds often waste their energy on trivial things. Comparison, jealousy, chasing external fame. They use strong legs to run away from themselves, keen eyes to find fault in others, but the child is lacking. They have no choice but to live by inner strength. When their eyes cannot see, they are forced to use their heart to feel. When their intellect is not sharp enough to analyze the complex world, they are forced to live by the purity of instinct and faith. The child's lack, like a large scar on the adult's minds, forces the parents to slow down. They must change their entire life rhythm to match the child's pace. They must learn to give without expecting a return. Learn to communicate not with words, but with breath, with the smallest care. Scientific explanations can only name the illness, but the child themselves teaches their parents the lesson of compassion, a lesson no school can teach. That lesson is greater than any degree, more valuable than any invention. That child not only bears the lesson for themselves, but also bears the responsibility of awakening humanity in those who interact with them. So, my child, do not just listen to the explanation, listen to the silent voice of the soul. Genetic error is just a temporary name for an arrangement with a profound meaning. That imperfection is proof that the soul never gives up. It is willing to accept the greatest challenge, to achieve the fastest growth, to untie the knots of stubborn attachment. That is why the mother's heart does not complain, but feels that her child is bearing too great a lesson. That lesson is not a punishment, but the fastest way to love, the only thing truly complete in this universe. My child, let us look together at the invisible wall surrounding those with imperfections. That wall is built not of brick and stone, but of ignorance and the fear of the community. When life does not fit the mold that humans set, that difference immediately becomes a suspicious question mark. In isolated villages, in areas where the light of intellect has not shined deep enough, people easily label this difference with darkness and superstition. They do not call it a challenge from nature, but call it an omen, a punishment, or even an unforgivable family fault. You see, the greatest sorrow is not that the child cannot see, walk, or speak clearly, but no one dares to look at them naturally. When born with an enduring form or an immature mind, they are pushed into forced isolation. The house door is closed not because their body is weak, but because the soul door of the neighbor is already tightly shut. The community has turned itself into a giant prison for those who are different. People often whisper behind their backs. They use avoiding eyes to measure others' pain. Hatred or judgment does not come from malice, but from the fear of the unknown. They fear that the imperfection is a contagious disease. They fear it will break the false perfection they are trying to build for their own lives. So, that incomplete child is stripped of the right to live normally, the right to go to school, the right to play, the right to be called by their full name. The difference becomes a silent sentence carried out by the community. They are imprisoned not within the four walls of their room, but within the four walls of stigma built by others. I want you to see, those with physical or mental lack often have an incredibly sensitive soul. They feel the cold shoulder, the avoidance, deeper than physical pain. The greatest suffering of man is not material hunger, but the hunger for connection, the hunger for acceptance that is denied to them. They crave a normal look, a greeting without pity, a touch of the hand without reservation, simply to be acknowledged as part of the flow of life. This is the time we must use the wisdom of compassion to break down that wall. We must teach people that embracing difference does not make you weaker. It makes you more human. Opening your house door to an incomplete soul is opening the door to completeness in your own soul. The imperfection of others is a mirror reflecting your own humanity. Only when understanding is sown will difference cease to be a sentence. But a necessary color enriches the tapestry of humanity. You mentioned wounds spreading from the earth, the painful legacies of toxins, of prolonged poverty. This is a different kind of suffering. It does not come from a past life arrangement, but is the clear consequence of the collective ignorance that humanity has sown in this life. Look at the lands that were once battlefields, where chemical toxins soaked into Mother Earth. Grass cannot grow. The water is no longer clear, and life struggles to survive. Then years later, when the war has passed, the pain rises again, in the distorted forms of the children born there. Their physical lack, their mental deficiency, is not individual fault, but a community burden. They are sorrowful messengers, carrying on their skin an indictment of the destructive actions of previous generations. They force people to face the truth. No act of brutality is ever completely over. The evil that humans sow into the earth and air will return in the forms of their descendants. This teaches us an important lesson about indivisible connection. People think they can wage war, poison, exploit, without consequence. But life is a unified whole. When you hurt the earth, you hurt the river, you hurt another person, you are inflicting injury upon yourself, upon your own future. The children, bearing the legacies of war and toxins, are the common wound of humanity. They do not need lamentations or tears of pity. They need a genuine repentance from all mankind. Repentance is not just words, but action to atone. Repentance is the well-bodied extending their hands to care, to support. It is working tirelessly to heal the damaged lands, to erase the material consequences that ancestors caused. Similarly, look at the lack of form, the mental deficiency caused by poverty. When the mother lacks nutrition, when the child grows up in a toxic environment of scarcity, their development is affected from the root. That lack is not chosen by the soul, but caused by social injustice. In these cases, the lack is not an individual lesson, but a challenge sent to those who can help. It asks, can you live peacefully when you see your brothers bearing pain? That is not their fault? That distorted life is the strongest motivation for us to realize community responsibility. It reminds us that until the last child in the poor, poisoned land is cared for and lives with full dignity, none of us has the right to call ourselves perfect or complete. Use your eyes to see the injustice. Use your hands to build. And use your heart to embrace this historical burden. My child, after seeing isolation and injustice, let us look deeply at how the world reacts to those enduring forms. The most common reaction is pity. Pity is an easy emotion to generate. It seems like love, but in reality, it is a very subtle wall of separation. Pity always involves looking down. The giver of pity always places themselves in a higher position, the position of the complete and the bestower of grace. When you look down on others with pity, you inadvertently strip them of their dignity. You see their lack. You feel relieved that you are not them, and you give a little money or comfort to soothe your own conscience. That act does not come from a deep connection, but from shallow fear. You fear facing the truth. We are no different. That lack could happen to me at any moment. Pity says, I feel so sorry for you. Respect says, I see the resilience in you. Pity looks at what they cannot do. Respect looks at what they have achieved despite their limitations. Respect is an equal recognition. It doesn't need to be spoken. but is shown through a direct, non-avoiding gaze, through treating them as a friend, a neighbor, a worker, not a topic or a burden. The person with the lack, whether physical or mental, they do not need your pity. What they need is recognition of their presence and their value. Pity will make them feel lonelier because it emphasizes the distance between the giver and the receiver. The biggest difference between pity and compassion is connection. Love is sharing the pain. It is the willingness to help without creating distinction. Pity is seeing someone else's pain and quickly stepping back, telling yourself, "Fortunately, that's not me." My child, if you truly want to help the souls residing in those enduring forms, start by eliminating the sense of superiority in your mind. Treat the pure smiles of the mentally simple or the extraordinary efforts of those with physical lack as a source of inspiration, not a reason for regret. When you learn to respect their presence, when you understand that life does not need to be complete to be valuable, then you will truly see the completeness of the soul hidden within. Respect is a bridge. Pity is a wall. You must choose to build the bridge. You have seen the forms that carry endurance on the outside, but I want you to look at another kind of lack, a lack that is invisible and 1,000 times more dangerous. When a person is gifted a healthy body, a sharp mind, but chooses to live with a rotten soul, they are the ones the world calls perfect, strong legs to run the race for fame, keen eyes to scrutinize the faults of others, and a clever mind to seek personal gain, even when it harms those around them. They use their material completeness as a weapon to distinguish, to exploit, to build a world only for themselves. The true distortion is not in a crooked joint or a missing sense, but in the callousness of compassion. In their heart there is no room for unconditional sharing. They live in terrible loneliness right in the middle of a crowd, because they have cut themselves off from the source of life, the boundless connection. Their body may have no scars, but their soul is full of self-inflicted wounds from jealousy, attachment, and the habit of judging. Greed becomes the lame leg that prevents them from walking the path of compassion. Arrogance becomes the fog that prevents them from seeing the beauty of simplicity. So, my child, do not rush to label those with enduring forms as the ones who are lacking. Contemplate deeper. Who is truly incomplete? I have seen the rich, the powerful, their bodies without a scratch. Yet they live in an inescapable whirlpool of despair. They fear death, they fear loss, and they fear the truth that their so-called perfection is just a hollow shell, an illusion that can shatter at any moment. Conversely, I see a person born with an immature mind, but their smile has no deceit, no worry. They live a life as pure as a stream, uncomplicated, unburdened by ambition. That soul, though residing in a non-standard body, radiates an unmatched inner completeness. The greatest lack is not being unable to run fast, but being unable to stop to hear the cry of another. The greatest lack is not being unable to see the sunlight, but being unable to see the benevolent light within oneself. This is the final lesson of equality. We all come to this world with a soul wound that needs healing. It is just that the healthy-bodied have hidden that wound deeper, making them mistakenly believe they no longer need to learn or grow. This very misconception is the greatest imperfection of man. My child, having seen the distortion of the soul, let us now look at the measure that humanity has set to categorize each other. Humans, with their inherent fear of chaos, constantly try to create rigid templates, to define which life is valuable and which life needs pity or should be eliminated. They create metrics for productivity, for speed of thought, IQ, for physical beauty. Based on these shallow measures, they easily conclude that a person who cannot work, cannot communicate with complex language, or cannot walk quickly is a faulty product of nature, a burden on society. This is a systemic error. Life, by its very nature, never needs to be measured to prove its worth. A blade of grass in the field does not need to be taller than the great tree to be considered life. A morning dewdrop does not need to prove its long-term viability. Existence is already a declaration of absolute value. When humans use the wrong measure, they impoverish their own worldview. They only accept uniformity and fear diversity. They forget that it is precisely the non-conforming life forms that teach us about the power of adaptation and the meaning of impermanence. A person's value is not in how much material wealth or convenience they can bring to the world. That value lies in their ability to breathe, to feel, to express their pure nature, even if that nature is expressed through an unformed cry or a slow touch of the hand. If humans only respect the intelligent and the strong, that is not respect for life. That is merely worship of capability. Worship of capability leads to arrogance and cruelty towards the less fortunate. Conversely, cherishing a person's existence, presence, regardless of their condition, is the highest expression of compassion. You must understand that the completeness of the universe lies in its acceptance of all forms, all colors, all states. The world that humans try to build, where everything must be perfect and predictable, is just a false, soulless picture. The lack you see on others' bodies is the warning hammer that shatters your illusion of perfection. It forces you to realize that the only thing you need to pursue is not the capability to do, but the ability to accept everything as it is. That accepting soul is the ultimate completeness I want you to seek. Isolation has been spoken of, my child, but I want you to dig deeper into the nature of the silence surrounding those who are different. The greatest isolation does not come from geographical distance, but from the refusal to listen. Many with differences grow up in an absolute silence, not because they cannot make sounds, but because no one is willing to shift their mind to understand their language. They use their eyes, their breath, their slow body movements to communicate. But the world only demands sharp words and quick logic. When their speech does not keep up with the world's hurried pace, they are labeled as incapable of communication, and pushed into the dark corner of invisibility. The fear here is not the fear of catching a disease, but the fear of inconvenience and the fear of facing the unfamiliar. The healthy fear lowering their speed. They fear dedicating endless patience to understand a person with an immature mind. They fear that if they truly listen, they will have to change their entire way of life and thought. That wall of isolation, therefore, is built with indifference and the laziness of the soul. I have seen youth sitting silently, their eyes holding an ocean of thoughts, but with no way to convey them outwards. They are imprisoned within their own rich inner world. That is a sorrow greater than physical pain, the sorrow of being unrecognized. Humans need to be recognized. They need to know that their feelings, their thoughts, are valuable, even when they are not encoded in conventional words. When not listened to, a person gradually loses faith in their own existence. They become soulless ghosts in the flow of life. Your task is to become the silence breaker. You must learn to receive the message through the gaps in language, through the trembling of their hands, through the gentle touch of compassion. True connection does not need a perfect language. It only needs a heart ready to open and an unlimited patience. When you learn to listen with all your senses, you will find that those with differences are telling you truths that are purer and deeper than any philosopher. They teach you about truthfulness, about simplicity, and about how to accept life without analysis or judgment. Only when you dare to step through the initial fear, step into their silent world, you will see that the locked door has actually been open for a long time. It is just waiting for someone brave enough to step inside. My child, we have spoken of the burdens that form and environment bring. Now, I want you to look up at the soul, the source of all life and consciousness. Humans often view material lack as a penalty from past life karma, a burden to be repaid to balance mistakes. But I want you to see a deeper truth. In my teaching, karma is not punishment, but the blueprint for growth and a vehicle for quick liberation. For the soul residing in an enduring body, this material lack is often the shortest, fiercest path to reach inner peace. Contemplate this. People born with complete bodies fight their whole lives to let go of attachment to the material self, attachment to beauty, to strength, to speed. They spend decades, even many lifetimes, facing and letting go of greed, anger, delusion. But for a soul limited from the start, that attachment is automatically severed, cruelly and effectively. Limitation is the cleansing fire. It burns away all illusions of physical glory that the world worships. The child cannot run for fame, so their goal is no longer governed by comparison. Eyes cannot see, so they will never be distracted by the meaningless images of vanity. When all external doors close, the soul has no choice but to turn inward, to the only place where true completeness exists. Every physical limitation is a subtle spiritual protection. That limitation forces the soul to seek a never-ending source of strength, the strength of absolute calmness and acceptance. They must learn to exist not by what they can do, but by their ability to accept everything as it is. This is the condensed lesson that the healthy-bodied take a very long time to reach. That lack is not a debt to be paid, but a courageous choice by the soul. They accept a great challenge to complete the life and death lesson faster, to prove to the world that happiness does not depend on physical function, and that peace is an internal decision, not the result of external perfection. When a person is imprisoned within their own body, cannot speak, cannot walk, cannot see, all their battles are internal battles. They learn to find joy in the silence of the morning, the warmth of a mother's hand, or a pure tremor of gratitude. Their source of joy is not external possessions, but their own inner strength. Their limited life, therefore, carries a spiritual weight greater than many long but meaningless lives of those who only chase fleeting fame. They are silent masters, quietly proving that the soul is never harmed by material lack. So do not pity them. Respect the brave choice of their soul. Respect the fierceness of the path they chose to reach liberation fastest. They are living a life that minimizes all conditions for happiness, and that very minimalism is the light that shines on the path for all of us. My child, the lesson I have spoken of is not just for the soul with the lack, it is also for those fortunate enough to care for them. That incomplete child is a silent teacher for the parents and the community, and the care that people give them is a special path of spiritual practice. The act of caring for a body or a mind that is not self-sufficient is non-formal meditation, a constant and rigorous discipline. It forces people to abandon all calculations of time, of personal gain, of the expectation of reward, when you must wipe the sweat of someone who cannot turn over by themselves, when you must patiently repeat a loving word or action hundreds of times for a mentally deficient person. You are performing an act of pure, selfless compassion. That care is no longer just a simple duty. It becomes daily spiritual practice. A great lesson in the virtue of humility. You must bow down, put aside the arrogance of the benefactor, to serve unconditionally. This service breaks the ego of attachment. You can no longer be the most important person, because the life of another depends on your presence and patience. More importantly, that care teaches you the virtue of absolute presence. You cannot do this with a mind dreaming of the future or regretting the past. When you face the basic and urgent needs of a fragile person, every meal, every breath, every turn, you are forced to live completely in this moment, the only place where peace and effectiveness exist. The caregiver is pulled out of the world's whirlpool of greed and desire. They have no time to worry about fame or fleeting possessions, because life and essential needs are right before their eyes, filling their minds completely. They are forced to live a life minimized in desire, but enriched in spiritual experience. Families caring for the disabled often reach a depth of soul that others do not. They are warriors of compassion, trained daily to break down their own wall of selfishness. They realize that their own completeness is not in their ability to heal or change the other person's destiny, but in allowing love to heal their own soul through the act of service. Love is not an emotion, it is an action, and the act of serving the one with the lack is the clearest, most transparent form of compassion. Unlimited patience, detailed attention to every small breath. These are matchless meditations that do not require sitting under the Bodhi tree. They are not just caregivers, they are bodhisattvas at home, perfecting their own virtues. They learn to give without expecting a return, because the greatest reward is already inside their soul. Peace, humility, and a deep understanding of the nature of suffering. My child, you are always looking out there, looking at the boundless, vast universe. You are searching for something, a fullness, a completeness, aren't you? But you make a small mistake. You try to confine that completeness to a single form. You name it healthy, perfect, according to your view. But my child, that is not how things work. Look at the flow of life. what I call the Dharma. It is the rule that never stops, always moving, and never incomplete. You see, the completeness of the universe is not in its elimination of anything. On the contrary, it is in its embrace of everything. Light cannot exist without darkness for contrast. Beauty needs ugliness to be recognized. And this life itself needs to accept even what you call lack. Every form, every state, every thought, whether you see them as flawed or perfect, they are all crucial, essential notes in nature's magnificent symphony. If one note is missing, the music will no longer be complete. Think about it. If everything were perfect, where would people learn compassion from? It is from seeing others needing help, from seeing suffering, that the goodness in you has a chance to grow, isn't it? If there were no small sorrows, people would never yearn for true inner peace. Pain is the compass, pointing you to seek eternal refuge. And if there were no imperfections, people would forever cling to material things, to external images that you call perfect. Then you would forget your true origin, the spiritual source, where completeness has always resided. So, the souls who bring what you call lack to this world, they do not come here to be pitied. They are the ones who enrich the definition of life. They are small messengers of diversity, and they are great teachers, teaching us the biggest lesson: acceptance. I want you to see this, my dear child. Completeness is not a destination that you must labor to chase after. Completeness is the state you already possess right now. Right here, that complete state will appear when you fully let go of judging all forms. When you can look at an enduring body struggling and still see the absolute beauty of the soul striving to live within. No more pity, no more fear, then you have seen the truth, and then you will realize a profound thing. No one is born incomplete. There is only one unchanging truth. All life is complete right within its own lack. Carry this understanding in your heart and live lightly, my child. Love all unconditionally. That is how you find me. Find absolute completeness. My child, now that you have truly seen the completeness within all lack, and your heart has opened to accept everything, the remaining task is the most important: action with wisdom. You cannot stop at just feeling love or silent pity. Pity is the seed, but action is the soil and water. My child, those who have a healthy body, their responsibility is much greater. It is not just seeing and feeling. It must be engaging in building an inclusive society. Remember my words. The true maturity of a civilization is never measured by soaring skyscrapers or straight paved roads. Maturity is measured by how it treats, how it protects, and how it uplifts its most vulnerable citizens, those who need the most support. We must be the architects. We must build the bridges, material bridges and spiritual bridges, to remove all separation, all isolation. You have strong legs? Use them to walk for those who cannot. You have keen eyes? Use them to see the invisible barriers that others face. You have a sharp mind? Use it to design, to create a living environment that is fair and easy for everyone. This requires a small sacrifice, my child. It is giving up a little personal convenience for the convenience of the community. This requires us to view differences in form, in ability, as completely normal, and a legitimate need that society must address. You must understand that inclusion is not an act of charity from the strong to the weak. It is not alms. Inclusion is compensation for the injustices, the disadvantages that history and the collective karma of the community have accidentally or deliberately caused. Each of us, the healthy in common view, carries an invisible duty to all life. That duty is to ensure that no soul is left behind, that no one is marginalized simply because their form does not fit the mold that humans have set. This is the final test, the supreme test of the compassion you have learned. That test is to transform the warm, loving emotion in your heart into solid, enduring support systems in the physical world. Act with love and wisdom, my child. That is the path to true peace. My child, listen to me speak about time. You have felt confused, even heartbroken, looking at how time is placed upon these special destinies. You see their lives as so short, so constantly fragile, close to loss. You think it is a shortening, an injustice, but I want you to see something deeper. This is not a shortening, but a condensation of the lesson. Imagine another person who might need many lifetimes, many long centuries, to learn a little patience, They must go through many ups and downs to finally let go of a small attachment. Conversely, these brave souls are placed in an extremely high-intensity learning environment. Life places a rigorous demand on them. Be awake immediately. Think about it. They must learn to contemplate impermanence in every breath, in every beat of their weak heart. Their fragile form is a constant and undeniable reminder of change, of the dissolution of all things. Every small desire of theirs must be controlled by the body's limits. Every clinging to wholeness is tested daily. This is how the universe teaches them the greatest lesson of letting go, quickly and thoroughly. The fragility of the material form is the alarm bell, pushing the soul into immediate awakening. They do not have the luxury of time to postpone spiritual practice, no time to postpone living with unconditional love. They must learn to love now, must accept now. For them, each day lived completely is like a miniature lifetime. In that miniature lifetime, they must complete the lesson of accepting their destiny. They must clearly understand the absolute value of the present moment, because they know the next moment is not guaranteed. Their seemingly short life, therefore, carries a much greater spiritual weight than long lives that drift by meaninglessly, in procrastination and oblivion. They are the masters of living with the urgency of the present. Revere their courage and the speed of their practice. They chose the hardest path to achieve enlightenment fastest. View their time as pure gold, condensed to shine brighter. Cherish every breath, my child. My beloved child, look deeply into what you call lack. It is not just a condition, but a great teacher of the cycle of birth, aging, sickness, death. Observe those you call healthy. Most spend their entire lives doing one thing, evading death. They rush to build wealth, fame, power. All are extremely fragile protective walls. They tremble before the end, the dissolution of the body they have worshipped as perfect and eternal. But for the souls living in enduring forms, everything is completely different. The proximity to what you call annihilation has become an inseparable part, a part of every breath, every day they live. They no longer fear death as a strange, terrible guest. Instead, they have learned to accept it as a silent companion, always nearby. You see, they realize the ultimate truth early. This body is just a temporary inn that the soul rents for a short time. And death? Death is simply one action, returning this borrowed form to nature, to earth, water, wind, and fire. Their extraordinary courage lies in the fact that they let go of attachment to this body before it truly dissolves. They do not wait until the last moment to let go. They learn to live as if they are preparing to leave every day. They teach us a valuable lesson. Completeness is not in trying to prolong your physical lifespan. Completeness is in your readiness to leave at any moment, with an unburdened soul, without regret. By facing fragility daily, they have reached a state that those rushing for fame and fortune can never touch. Freedom from impermanence. They have conquered the fear of loss, and that is the final gift, the greatest gift they give to this world, liberation from humanity's greatest fear, the fear of death. They have proven that the soul is never limited by the form. Look at them and set aside your fear, my child. Live completely in every moment and let go of attachment. My child, now you and I have traveled a long road together. We have touched upon the deepest suffering. We have tried to overcome the cold explanations of science. We have faced the heartless judgment of the community. And finally, we have found the profound wisdom of the soul itself. You asked me, with all your confusion, why are some born incomplete in your view? My child, the answer is never in a single small cause. It is the union of all the things I have said. It could be the result of individual karma the soul brings. It is a community legacy that needs correction. At the same time, it is a necessary lesson for the loved ones around them. And ultimately, it is a challenging shortcut for that soul to achieve enlightenment faster. Engrave this in your mind. No one is abandoned in this universe. The lack, the limitation of one person is precisely the strongest invisible thread, tying us all together as one block. It has an incredibly important function. It reminds the rich of the moral responsibility to share. It reminds the arrogant of humility before destiny. And most importantly, it reminds the healthy of the shared fragility of all human destiny. No one is immune. Now let us raise this sacred prayer together. Let this prayer echo in every corner of your heart. May those enduring forms find deep, unshakable peace in the calmness of the soul. May the caregivers, the servers, find true, light joy in the daily act of unconditional service. And may all of humanity finally remove every wall of fear and stigma. Remember, we are one. There is no meaningful distinction between the soul-born healthy and the soul that is limited. We are all rushing rivers. But the final destination is the same place, the vast ocean of compassion. When you can accept the lack of others as your own healed lack, you have entered the absolute completeness of the Bodhisattva path. Live every day as if you are bearing that burden yourself, as if you are the one facing that lack, and you will find liberation.